I can't say for certain when it began. Maybe it was always there, hidden beneath the hum of my fridge or the distant murmur of traffic outside. I moved into the apartment 6 months ago, and it had been blissfully uneventful. Quiet. Predictable. That's exactly what I wanted. Living alone was supposed to give me a sense of control, a sanctuary from the chaos of everything outside. But lately, the apartment felt different, less mine. It started with faint scratching sounds in the walls. At first, I barely noticed. I'd hear the occasional rustling or tiny thuds, and I figured it was mice. The building was old after all, and the landlord hadn't exactly been forthcoming about the state of the place. "It's cozy," he had said with a tight grin, as though the peeling wallpaper and uneven floorboards were charming instead of unsettling. The scratches didn't bother me much. It's part of life in the city, I told myself. But then one night, I was lying on the couch, scrolling through my phone, and I heard it again. Only this time, it wasn't just scratching. It was deliberate, rhythmic, like someone, or something, was dragging its nails slowly across the inside of the wall. I froze, the glow of my phone screen casting long shadows on the walls. My heart pounded as I held my breath, listening. Probably just a raccoon. I whispered aloud, my voice shaky. Saying it out loud made it feel less real, like naming it somehow stripped it of its power. I distracted myself with a movie, turning the volume up loud enough to drown out the noise. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The apartment was too quiet, like it was holding its breath along with me. The next few nights, it got worse. The scratches became more frequent, more insistent. They seemed to follow me, from the living room to the kitchen, even into my bedroom. One night, I woke up at 2 a.m., drenched in sweat, convinced I had heard breathing. Soft, shallow breathing, coming from somewhere near the air vent above my bed. I stared at the vent, my chest tightening as the seconds dragged on. There was nothing there. Of course, there was nothing there. The next morning, I felt foolish. Sleep deprivation was clearly messing with my head. "You're imagining things," I muttered to myself, trying to shake the unease that clung to me like a second skin. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I didn't want to admit how much the noises were getting to me. They consumed my thoughts in ways I couldn't explain. During the day, it was easier to brush them off. With sunlight streaming through the windows and the comforting routine of emails and coffee, the scratches seemed distant. But as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon, they returned, louder and closer than ever. It wasn't just the sounds anymore, it was the feeling. That awful, suffocating feeling of being watched. I started catching myself, glancing over my shoulder while brushing my teeth, or lingering too long by the light switch in the hallway, reluctant to turn it off. I'd laugh at myself, force a nervous chuckle and mutter, "You're being ridiculous." But the laughter always felt hollow, as though even I didn't believe it. When I bought the camera, it felt like taking control again, like pushing back against the paranoia. I told myself it was practical, rational, just a precaution. Setting it up felt almost cathartic. I positioned it carefully on the bookshelf, ensuring the air vent was visible in the corner of the frame. It was silly, of course. Nothing would come of it. The footage would confirm what I already knew, that the noises were just pests, or perhaps my overactive imagination. That night, I stayed up later than usual, pretending to binge a show, but really waiting for the camera to do its work. The thought of sleeping unnerved me, but at some point, exhaustion won out, and I fell into a restless haze, clutching my phone in one hand and leaving the bedside lamp on. The next morning, the first thing I did, before coffee, before brushing my teeth, was check the footage. My heart raced as I opened the app, my thumb trembling over the play button. The video loaded, pixelated at first, then clear. It showed me moving around the living room, setting up the camera. Then, silence, stillness, hours of unremarkable nothingness, and then movement. I thought it was a trick of the light at first, a small shift in the shadows near the vent. I leaned closer, squinting at my phone screen. The shadow moved again, and this time it wasn't light or a reflection. It was something else. Someone else. The eyes appeared suddenly, two glints in the dark vent. They didn't blink. They didn't flinch. They just stared, unblinking, unfeeling, and entirely too real. My breath caught, an icy weight pressing against my chest. My shaking fingers almost dropped the phone as I rewound and watched again, unable to believe what I was seeing. My mind raced, spiraling through possibilities as I stared at the frozen image on my phone. The eyes, they were still there, faint but undeniably human. What was worse was the intent I felt behind them. This wasn't some animal caught in a crawl space. No, this was deliberate, calculated. Someone was watching me. I sat frozen on the couch for what felt like an eternity, clutching the phone like a lifeline. The morning light pouring through the blinds should have brought clarity, but it only served to illuminate the growing dread curling in my stomach. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. The air was too thick, the silence too loud. I forced myself to stand. My legs trembled as I paced the room, every creak of the floorboards sending shivers down my spine. I kept glancing at the vent. Was he still there, just out of view? What if he was waiting for me to leave? What if he wasn't alone? I called the landlord, my voice breaking as I tried to explain the unexplainable. There's someone in the vents. I have proof. I hated how hysterical I sounded, but there was no way to say it calmly. The landlord brushed me off, suggesting I get some rest and stop watching scary movies. His dismissiveness only made it worse. I was on my own. I grabbed a bag, stuffing it with whatever I could find. Wallet, keys, phone charger, essentials. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped half the items on my way to the door. My plan was simple. Leave. Find a coffee shop, maybe a hotel, anywhere but here. But as I reached for the doorknob, I hesitated. What if he knew I was leaving? What if he was waiting for me in the hallway? The thought paralyzed me. I stood there, hand hovering over the lock, heart pounding in my chest. Finally, I mustered the courage to open the door, peering out cautiously. The hallway was empty, normal. I stepped outside, locking the door behind me with trembling fingers. Every step down the corridor felt like a lifetime. I didn't look back. That was months ago, but the memory hasn't faded. I moved to a new apartment across the city, one with bright windows and no air vents. I should feel safe,